Hello everyone, this is Ben Dunn, your AP Sensei, here again talking about the comic industry and things that are going on. I'm also the founder of Antarctic Press, a comic book company founded in 1985, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. I'm also the creator of such comics as Warrior Nun, Marvel Mangaverse, Tomorrow Girl, Ninja High School, and the upcoming Vampire Ninja Ono, now on Kickstarter. Check it out. I think you'll like it. It's a story of a ninja who turned vampire battling a werewolf turned hitman. So, I don't post as often as I like to because, I'm busy. I'm working on comics. I'm running the editorial situation here at Antarctic Press. I help my brother run the company and just don't have time to do things like I should be doing as far as YouTube is. But, that's fine. The good thing about it is I can just turn on the old microphone, fire up the computer, and start yakking away. I want to be able to maintain a schedule so that I can continue to put out comics because that's really where my heart lies and where my joy lies. But I am going to be talking about things that I think are detrimental to the comic industry and how it's affecting things overall. Now, today's topic is going to be trust. Now, people are going to say, Ben, what do you mean by trust? Well, I'll tell you, the comic industry from the very beginning of its foundation has always had, in my opinion, a trust issue. This is one of those things where you just can't get around it. Publishers, I'll tell you, especially comic book publishers, tend to be a rather unscrupulous lot for the most part. Like Batman saying that criminals are a cowardly and superstitious lot. Well, comic book publishers are rather, scheming and unscrupulous lot for the most part. Let's face it, they are. I dare say almost every publisher, has had a underhanded dealings in some form or another. Whether it's to, because in the end, they want to make money. And what is the biggest expense of any comic book publisher? Is the talent. It's not the printing. It's not the distribution. It's not the advertising. It's always been about the talent. Anytime a publisher can, screw the talent, they'll do it. Believe me, I've seen it. Now, is Antarctic Press guilty of that? Well, I'd like to say we are not. That's maybe one of the reasons that we've been around for so long, because we built trust with our creators. Now, I'm not saying we haven't done things in the past. 40 years is a long time to be a comic book publisher where maybe things haven't gone as well as they should. And I'll be honest with you, there's probably times that a lot of creators, who've worked with us have very negative feelings about us. And, I hate to think that, but it's probably true. And I can't deny it. That's the way it is really in life in general. But not only is trust a quantity that is lacking in comic book publishing, it's also lacking in the other side of the talent as well, and creators as well, because they too are in it for themselves. Let's face it, that's just the nature of the beast. And the thing about it is that how do we, and plus, it's also the trust of the consumer. When the consumers are betrayed, you lose that trust. There's an old saying that says that it's very, very hard to build trust and very easy to tear it down. That's one of those things that is just one of those euphemisms of life that cannot be denied. People can say things to get you your trust. And it's up to you on both sides to fulfill that trust. Without trust, then what do you have? You have lies. And when you have lies, there's no way you can build a solid foundation to continue, building up your consumer base and maintain relationships with your creators and with publishers and editors. It just simply will come to a head someday, in which it will all come tumbling down. One of the things that we pride ourselves on here at Anarch Press is that we are transparent. We are an open book. If you are a creator who've ever worked for Anarch Press knows that if there's anything that you feel like you've been, wronged on, all you simply have to do is contact us and we'll take care of it. We'll work something out. We'll tell you how we derived this thing or that thing and our decision. And then honestly, sometimes we just make mistakes. We're human. When we make a mistake, we own up to it and we admit it. Say, hey, oh shoot, we should not have done that, or that was a mistake, or we forgot about to do that. If you don't admit you've made a mistake, then nothing will ever get resolved. I mean, it's just a simple matter of the fact. Now, how do we build trust? Well, it's very easy to say to trust me. It's very difficult to maintain that trust. If you say you're going to deliver a book in a certain amount of time, you are trusted to deliver that book. Now, I admit I am late on some of my material. I'm trying to do my best to get my product out there as quickly as I can, while maintaining a semblance of quality that you will enjoy, that it'll be worth it. And I try to maintain that level of trust by being honest with the situation at hand. I always try to let people know why I'm late on certain projects, and I'm doing my best to catch up. That, may not be an ideal situation, but at least my readers know where I am at the time, and I don't try to lead them on into thinking, that I have none of their interests at hand. And that's one of those things that you have to build in order to maintain a solid foundation. It's one, and it's also, you can't take people's money, okay, and not deliver your product. There's a certain time where a reasonable amount of time that people are willing to give somebody in order to get a project out. And I'm specifically talking about those creators who are late, not just late, but extremely late in delivering the product that was promised. It seems befuddling to me why they would try to create so many projects at one time without fulfilling the previous project. It's just one of those things that makes no sense to me. And the only reason I would think is that they're just greedy, which is something I'll probably talk about in another video. But for now, the one thing, and also trust among the comic industry is also very, very lacking. I mean, even in comic retailing, there's always a trust issue there. The retailers are always bragging about how cheaply they can get something, while trying to brag about how much they sold something. I'm not saying that all retailers and all publishers and all creators are like that. No. But all it takes is a few rotten apples to spoil the bunch, as the old adage goes. And it does take everything down when there's a trust issue. If a lot of creators, if some creators, do not fulfill their promises, it reflects badly on all creators. Customers maybe want to be suspicious of any new creator, thinking that, hey, if this is an established creator and can't meet his promises, then, what is a new creator chances are doing? And that really reflects badly on new creators. And so I think that one of the things that needs to be done is we need to build back trust with the consumer, trust with publishers and creators, things like that. I know it's difficult, but in the end, it really is not that difficult if you think about it. It's really quite simple. Keep your word. Don't make promises you cannot keep. Oftentimes, and this is often I hear creators not being paid the money that was promised them on projects, because they were over promised. Publishers, people can offer huge page rates. It's one thing to offer it; it's another thing to pay it. You have to ask yourself, which would you prefer? A bird in the hand or two in the bush? Would you rather deal with a person who may not pay a very, what you would consider a very high page rate, but will pay you on time and will pay you what is promised, as opposed to someone who offers you a pie in the sky page rate and never pay you at all? Which do you think is better? It's not a good choice. I grant you that. But as somebody who wants and needs work, you have to make that choice. And especially if you're a creator just starting out, just trying to make a name for himself. For established creators, that may not be an issue or problem. And I don't know how they handle it, but I'm pretty sure if they're in demand, they're working with companies that can actually pay them their page rate, that they consider worthy of them, and that's one of those things that you have to really consider when you're just starting out. So here's what I think needs to be done. We just simply need to learn to keep our word and don't make promises you can't keep. And if you make a mistake, you make an error, there's one thing to make an error. It's another thing to deliberately hide something or to keep information from somebody. Those are two different things. We've made mistakes. I grant you that. We're not perfect. We're human. I've made mistakes. And the difference is that I try to own up to my mistakes and admit when I'm wrong. And try to rectify that mistake as quickly as I can. Ask anybody who's worked for me or AP whether or not we've ever, tried to hide anything from them or not pay them what is owed. I don't think you'll find too many of them. Maybe in the early days that may be true, but certainly not today. So I would say that if you really want to start rebuilding the comic book industry, the first thing to do is to create trust again. Trust with publishers and creators, trust with publishers and customers. Trust is what is the glue that holds everything together, because without it, it all falls apart. So until next time, this has been done. Signing off, I do want to remind you that there is a campaign I have on Kickstarter called Vampire Ninja Ono. It's a fantastic tale of adventure and action and a little bit of horror. And I think it's something you would enjoy. So it is aimed at a more mature readers, but it's not adult. But it is a little bit more heavy in its topics. I will put the link below. I'm hoping you'll be a backer. Until next time, this has been done signing off.
From the darkness, she arrives with ninja stealth. Nothing